Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Good evening, everybody. We are resuming our Bhagavad Gita classes temporarily for about a month. So I'll be here till the end of January. So we'll have our regular classes on Fridays. And we'll take it up where we left it. We are doing the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And we had done up to the 16th verse. Don't worry, I'll give you a little bit of a recap. I remember this statistics teacher we used to have. And he would, in statistics, nowadays it's called data science, but he used to have these long derivations. So this implies this, this implies this, and the whole blackboard would be full of formulae. And this gentleman would fill up the blackboard, and the end of the session comes summer vacations. And when he comes back, the first class after the summer vacations, he starts off, he comes straight, picks up a chalk, this implies, and then he goes. We are totally at sea. The third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna is talking about that yes, ultimately we have to attain enlightenment. Call it God realization or self-realization. But until that point, what do you do with life? We are still working, we are still living our life in this world. And how do you live life as a spiritual seeker? Sri Krishna's answer is Karma Yoga. Transform your actions into spiritual practice. Which actions? All actions. While explaining Karma Yoga, Sri Krishna introduces a beautiful paradigm of the cycle. He says, in the 16th verse which we did, he talks about this cosmic cycle where we are part of a universe which is, there's give and take. We receive from the universe and we give back to it. And this cycle, we should support this cycle by our actions. If you violate this brings sorrow not only to ourselves but to the rest of creation. So this is the basic idea which Sri Krishna talks about. The 16th verse, let's chant that. I will chant it and then you please follow after. 16th verse of chapter 3. We have done it last time, but this is the recap. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haya aghayurindriya ramo mogham partha sajivati. So Krishna says to Arjuna, O Partha, the one who does not follow this cycle, which cycle? He has already spoken about that in the verses before this. One who does not follow this cycle, which has been set in motion by me as God, that person leads a sinful life. What kind of sinful life? Full of indulgence in sense pleasures. Indriya rama. The whole point is to have a party. The whole of life becomes about pleasure. And such a person lives in vain. Mogham partha sajivati. So this is his conclusion. What is he talking about? If you remember, he mentioned a cycle that you please the gods, he means the Vedic gods. You please the gods with the sacrifices which are mentioned in the Vedas. And the gods, pleased by your sacrifices, send forth rain, and the rain causes crops to grow, and this food sustains you, and from this comes progeny, and they in turn perform the sacrifices, and the cycle goes on. Basically, this idea of a cycle is very interesting. I will not go into all the discussions which we had last time, But just to remind you a little bit, we talked about deep ecology, that we are all part of nature. The entire modern green movement, all of that we are all part of nature. We are not separate from nature. Nature is not our property. So what we do to nature, nature does to us also. And nowadays we don't have to say that very much, because if you violate, as Sri Krishna says, if one violates this cycle, this natural cycle, then the result is sorrow. Global warming, rising temperatures, and so many problems across the world. It's very natural. It'll just don't take care of nature, nature doesn't take care of you. Everything goes around in a cycle here. When we were kids, we learned about the water cycle, and we had to draw this, that water goes up through evaporation and comes down as rain, and then it goes through the natural cycle, and then again back to the... So this water cycle we used to draw. But it's not just water. Everything in this world, not even just physical nature, even in society, in economy, at our personal life, in emotions, what we get, again, we have to replenish this. We have to let go back into society, because we are part of that. Wealth. So accumulation of wealth, very natural. But that accumulated wealth must again flow back into society. Not only for a healthy society, but also for a healthy personality. One yogi in India, he put it in a simple, rustic way. He said that we fools, we think that we are holding on to wealth. We don't understand that wealth is holding on to us. If I hold on to this chair firmly, I think I'm holding on to the chair, but I'm equally trapped. Now I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck to the chair now. I'm holding on to money. I think I'm holding on to money. Money is holding on to me. So at one point, one has to let go. This is, of course, said in a very simple and direct way, but I heard something similar, very interesting. Recently, some of you must have heard recently that Ram Dass, who was a leading figure in the 1970s spiritual movement in the United States, he passed away day before yesterday. He was suffering, he was from cancer. I think he was living in Hawaii. He was a major figure at one time. He wrote a book, Be Here Now, I think. And that became a central, like sort of a key book for 1970s generation. He was, before becoming Ram Dass, he was a professor at Harvard University. He was in the Department of Psychology. And his other more infamous colleague, Timothy Leary, so they started this whole thing of experimenting with drugs, LSD and all of that, psychedelics. So the whole movement started at that time. Anyhow, he was lucky. He moved on he got the grace of a very great sadhu in India, Neem Karoli Baba, and he himself became Ram Dass. And many famous people, members of the spiritual movement here. Right now in New York, you have Krishna Das, who is well known for the bhakti chants and all, singing, bhajans, kirtans. He was inspired by Neem Karoli Baba and others also. Anyhow, my point here is, I listened to a talk by Ram Dass on the net when I heard the news that he had passed away. So I was looking for some of his old talks in the 1970s. And so there's a humorous incident he mentions. His friend was Milton Friedman, who was Chicago School Economics, Nobel Prize winner, very brilliant economist. So Ram Dass mentions that how Milton Friedman once told him this story. A church in California, big church, called Milton Friedman once. They called from that church and they said, this year we have a huge surplus. Huge amount of money is left over. And we want to ask you about it. So Milton Friedman said, yes, what can I say? So we want to ask you, which is the best investment? Money left over in the church. So Milton Friedman said, have you considered giving it to the poor? This is a story being narrated by Ramdas. Have you considered giving it to the poor? And that person from the church, he said, are you the real Milton Friedman? A Nobel Prize winning economist, monetarist, he's saying, giving it to the poor. Are you the real Milton Friedman? And Milton Friedman replied, are you the real church? This idea, this accumulation of wealth, to let go and give it back into society. Of course, giving back also, it's not as easy or as simple as it sounds. We are now in the day of big charities. There's a gentleman called Anand Giridhari Das. He's a writer, a political commentator, I think. He's written this book, Winner Takes All. He's a critique of this, this cult of billionaires today. Anyway, I didn't know much about him, but somebody recommended him, and he was giving a talk at Harvard in the Kennedy School. I wanted to go. So I was all ready to go, but unfortunately that day we had 6 hours of lectures. At the end of it, we used to call it in those days, Enthu. It was gone. I had no motivation left to listen to one more lecture. Unfortunately, I missed it. It was a very good talk, it seems. Luckily, they uploaded it on YouTube, so you can see it. A conversation with Anand Giridhari Das at the Harvard Kennedy School, where he critiques this whole movement of giving. He says, this modern form, giving is good, but this modern form of giving charity by billionaires, his critique is that by donating a few $1 million, they're keeping alive a system which allows them to accumulate billions and billions, donating to causes, homelessness or the public education system, those causes which could have been addressed if the taxation system and certain other things had been taken care of, which would have made such enormous accumulation of wealth improbable, but then you would have had enough funds left over to look after these causes. Now you have these problems. Now there's some people who accumulate huge amounts of money, and he says they whitewash it by giving certain amount of money. And he was very bold. Sitting in Harvard, he said Harvard is one of the key places where he called it a reputation laundromat. But that apart, not only wealth, knowledge. Swami Vivekananda says in one of his talks in Belur Math to the monks, what good is your learning even if it is not for the benefit of others? Your life, your health, your learning, your wealth, all of it is again channeled back into society. And if one does not do this, why would one not follow this cycle? Sri Krishna says, Indriya Rama, an immature mindset. It's all for my pleasure. I and mine. Let me grab it. I will use all of this money. Why should I give it to anybody else? I'll have a blast. I'll enjoy myself. I'll buy gadgets and go on vacations and do this and that. Why should I spend for anybody else? So this kind of an immature mindset. What's wrong with this? It does not lead to happiness. Why does one do this? One does this because one expects one will be happy. I have earned a lot of money. Now let me spend it on myself. Why? Because that way I'll be happy. It does not work. Swami Vivekananda says in one place that it takes a little bit of maturity to see that doing things for others makes you happier. It's counterintuitive. I would think that doing things for myself will make me happier. Doing things for others makes me happier. That seems a little counterintuitive. But he says that is true. That's actually true. Swami Vivekananda goes on to say, the wise learn it quickly and the others take more time. They suffer. They go through suffering till they learn this thing. Indriya Rama, this engagement, this pursuit of sensual pleasure, and therefore for I and me and myself. That line from Somerset Maugham, which I love so much, in The Razor's Edge, he says that if you single-mindedly pursue pleasure, very soon you find nothing pleasing anymore. Single-mindedly pursue pleasure, very soon you find nothing pleasing anymore. So, Sri Krishna says this, Evam pravartitam chakram, in this way, this cycle which has been set in motion, those who do not follow it, they live in vain. You do not get happiness for yourself. You do not get happiness, and the society also does not benefit. Society itself is harmed. In contrast, the 17th verse. I'll chant and please repeat after me. Tvātma-ratir syād, tvātma-ratir syād, ātma-tṛiptaśh mānavaḥ, ātma-tṛiptaśh mānavaḥ, ātmanyeva santuṣhṭas, ātmanyeva santuṣhṭas, tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate, tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate. In contrast, the person who delights only in the self here means Atman. You can substitute God. If you are of the devotional inclination, you can substitute God. One who delights in the self, in the Atman, who is satisfied with the self, is content in the self alone, has no duties to perform. Tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate. What does this mean? The word tu in Sanskrit means but. So it indicates a change of tone. In contrast to what was just said, in contrast to the person who does not perform karma yoga, here is the person who has performed karma yoga. Shankaracharya there, he has a long introduction to this verse. The idea is, suppose one follows this cycle and does one's part and lives unselfishly. The spiritual seeker who does this is now ready for enlightenment, is now ready for realizing that I am the Atman. The Atman, which is pure being, pure consciousness, pure bliss. I am that infinite self. And then doing that, this person now is ready to remain centered in the Atman, in the infinite being within. Has no need of anything outside. So using the words ātma-ratir, takes delight in the Atman. ātma-tṛiptaśh is completely satisfied by the Atman. ātma-santuṣhṭas is completely contented in the Atman. Suppose somebody says, all right, I can do that. I have heard a number of classes and I can meditate and I can feel that I am the Atman, so I'll remain contented. Am I at this stage? How do I know that I've reached this stage? How do I know that I have transcended the stage of karma yoga? If this is the question. Shankaracharya in his commentary says that Krishna thinks Arjuna may have this in his mind. All right, you have taught me about karma yoga, you have taught me about this cycle, the cosmic cycle, and how to live life, a moral, ethical, giving, unselfish life. Now, what next? Because after all, the goal is enlightenment. So how do I know that I have reached the requisite qualifications for enlightenment? Do you go on doing this all your life? Or do you now graduate to the next level of enlightenment, to realizing that I am the self, to becoming an enlightened person, the Jivan Mukta? The question can be put in this way. Is it enough to be good? Is it enough to be ethical? Is ethics the final word? And this is an interesting question. We had such interesting discussions with the professors there in the divinity school, in the philosophy department. One thing I heard there, and I've heard earlier also, is that there is so little discussion, deep discussion, philosophical discussion of ethics in Indian texts. There are very few. For example, I attended a class on classical Buddhist philosophy in India, a period of nearly 1,000 years. And one text was the Bodhicharya Avatara of Shantideva, so which is all about altruism. And the professor said, look, this is the only text in this entire course which is about ethics. But ethics is such a big part of Western philosophy. So it's so strange that in this huge amount of literature in Indian philosophy, there is only very little or almost no discussion of ethics. Why is that so? Now, I was thinking about it, and the answer is very simple. The answer is that there is a deep, deep confusion in modern Western philosophy. The confusion is that enlightenment, God, Brahman, self, all those things don't exist. It's taken for granted. Those are superstitious. Those are religious. And nothing to do. But yes, ethics is important. And so we should talk about ethics, and ethics becomes a branch of philosophy. Now the deep confusion is this, that, number one, by discussing, arguing about ethics through reason, can you actually come to an understanding of what is right and wrong? Or you will keep on going subtler and subtler arguments. There is no end to the discussion. Can reason lead to an understanding of right and wrong? Ethics in Western philosophy says yes. The whole of Western ethics in Western philosophy is reasoning about right and wrong. So that's the first thing. And many philosophers, for example, like Wittgenstein and others, they say the ethics is not a matter of reasoning. Okay, this is one point. But worse, even worse, suppose you have been able to decide after a lot of reading lots of ethics textbooks and writing assignments and all of that, Ethics 101, you have finished the course. Now you have decided right and wrong. After deciding right and wrong through reasoning, through the power of reason itself, can you become a good person? Having decided what is right, now by that decision, can I now from now on be a good person? Can I stop doing bad things? Can I start doing good things? No. We know that. Everybody knows this is the human predicament. We know what is right. We don't feel like doing it. Duryodhana? We know what is wrong. Can't stop myself from doing it. The Duryodhana's famous reply to Krishna. Krishna said to him that what you're doing is wrong. And Duryodhana, who is the villain in the war, he expresses something that every one of us knows. He says, my problem is not that I do not know right and wrong. Don't give me a course on ethics. Ethics. I know what is right. My problem is I don't feel like doing it. I know what is wrong, adharma. My problem is I cannot stop myself from doing it. Why not? Why don't you feel like doing what's right? And why can't you stop yourself from doing what you know to be wrong? You admit it, that it's wrong. Why can't you stop yourself? He says something very powerful, that there is a force within me. Today we would call it the subconscious mind, whatnot. He says there's a force in my heart which forces me along this path. I can't help it. Janami dharmam nacha me pravritti. I know what is dharma. I have no interest in it. Janami adharmam nacha me nivritti. I know what is wrong. I can't stop myself. Kenapi devena hridisthitena. By some power within my heart. Yatha niyojito asmi tatha karomi. As I am directed, as I am pushed, I am impelled to do these things. That is a hammer blow to our modern conception of ethics. You can't. Even supposing, rationally, after all arguments, you come to a decision, these are good and these are bad, and from now on I will do only good things, I will never do bad things, because this is my decision from now, I have argued it out, I have read the textbooks, syllabus complete. After the syllabus, we are all moral saints. Never. It doesn't work that way. What is the Indian approach to it? The Indian approach is what you see in the Gita, what you see in yoga, what you see in bhakti. We know that we have to be good. How do you do that? What prevents us from being good? Look what he just said. What prevents you from following the cosmic cycle? Indriya rama. This tremendous engagement in chasing sensual pleasures. The single-minded pursuit of pleasure. It will not, if it did any good, then Godspeed to you. But it doesn't do good. It only brings unhappiness upon unhappiness. And yet we pursue it. It's not a rational decision. It's not a decision of the intellect. It's a power in our subconscious, in modern terms. In old terms, they would say, in my heart. Pran, in Bengali, you say pran tane. My prana, it pulls me. So this was understood. And the remedy was not arguing about ethics. The remedy was practice, purifying the mind. So that what you understand to be good is also what you want to do. Now the problem is, I know this is good, but I don't want to do it. When I purify the inner instrument, chitta shuddhi, they call it. Chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind. How? By karma yoga. By following this cosmic cycle. By playing one's part in this cycle, ethical cycle of this universe. Being a responsible person, responsible citizen, unselfish, caring about others, putting oneself last and others first. Doing all of this, it actually benefits me. It prepares the mind. It purifies the mind. Purifies the mind for what? For what lies beyond ethics. In none of these systems, I was talking about the Buddhist course on Buddhism. Buddhism, Jainism, in yoga, in bhakti, in Vedanta, in none of these systems is ethics the end of it. Ethics is the foundation for something that lies beyond. A Vaishnava will say, I have to realize my Krishna, my Bhagavan, my Vishnu. The Buddhist will say that I want to attain nirvana. The Vedantin will say I have to attain self-knowledge, enlightenment. That is the goal. And it's real. Sometimes we have these doubts, modern doubts, that I've heard it expressed by some people, that isn't it possible that all this talk of God and religion is just to make people good? It's not that God exists, but if you talk about God and make people believe in God, so out of fear of God or out of the desire to realize God, we will try to be good. So the whole purpose is to be moral. No. That's putting the cart before the horse, big time. God actually exists. This Atman we are talking about, the ultimate spiritual reality, it actually exists. It is worthwhile attaining. It's attaining this, realizing this, moksha, nirvana, whatever you call it. It is truly, truly worthwhile. So this is our approach to the problem of ethics. That's why the discussion is about purifying the mind. Discussion is about devotion and meditation and service, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, knowledge. Not so much about what is right and wrong. And I was amazed, just a week before coming here, I chanced upon this essay by a philosopher, Susan Wolf. I don't know where she is now. She's in one of the universities in the United States. She's active. Actually, I was looking for, the end term, you have to write papers. So I wanted to know what's a really, really good philosophy. What does it look like? In today's modern Western philosophy, what does a good paper look like? So I Googled it. Active philosophers today, best papers, best writing among active philosophers. Her name came up at the top. She's apparently the best writer, most clear writer. So I borrowed her book. The first essay in that collection is her most famous essay. Why she is famous? The name of that essay is Moral Saints. And she says, her beginning, there is a deep problem with the study of ethics. What is the problem? I was amazed to see that what I had been thinking about, exactly that she has written there. That she said, is it possible, even after we decide what is right and wrong, to become a saint by reading what is right? It's neither possible, and then she goes on to say that it's also not desirable. The way we put ethics, we cannot lead your life like that. But the interesting thing comes at the end. She says, then if that is not the goal, to argue about ethics and then find out what is right and then become that, if that is not the goal, then ethics cannot be an end in itself. Ethics must be for something else. And she gives it a name, the meta-moral. Meta-moral. What is the meta-moral? She says, I don't know. But there must be something beyond ethics. And that's where she ends the essay. It's a major essay in modern philosophy now. Moral saints. Exactly this question. What lies beyond ethics? So here, Sri Krishna says, beyond karma yoga lies enlightenment, self-realization. That word, all of this comes from that word, but, tu, which distinguishes this from what went on earlier. After this initial preparation, one ascends to this stage. Now the question is, how do I know whether I've reached this stage? Try it for yourself. Our own mind will tell us, can I remain centered in God or the self, Atma, as a witness self? 2 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours? Very difficult. We find it very difficult. One sadhu, Ram Sukh ji, who used to live in India, he passed away a few years ago. He was an expert on the Bhagavad Gita. That's all he studied all his life. He gave a beautiful recipe for practice. he said, japa, mantra, those who have got mantra, it applies to them. Mantra japa, repeating the name of God. He said, while doing your work in samsara, keep on repeating the mantra. And when the time comes to repeat the mantra, twice a day you have to sit down, shut down everything and repeat the mantra yourself. Sit down quietly in meditation. When the time comes to take the name of God, forget samsara. Totally. What is the formula? When engaged in samsara, don't forget God. When engaged in calling on God, forget samsara. This is the practice. Good formula. But if you try to do it, then what will happen is, samsara will pull us. Yeah. But remembering God in the midst of samsara, very difficult. You will find hours have passed. I forgot to take the name of my Krishna, my Rama, gone. And the opposite, when I sit down, I will not think of samsara. Only Rama and Krishna or whatever I want to repeat, the name of God. Samsara will automatically, effortlessly enter into our meditation. What the boss said, whether this work has been done, what shopping has to be done, and so many things, it will enter. What will I do after meditation? So all of that will enter in meditation. Why is this happening? This is the sure indicator that we have not graduated to the state which Sri Krishna talks about, where you delight in God, you're contented with God, and you find satisfaction in God. The three words used here, Sanskrit words, rati. Rati means taking delight in, being engrossed in something, like sense pleasures. So one enjoys eating a mango, for example, and you take great joy in it. The pleasure, the taste, and the fragrance of it, that is rati, engagement in sense pleasure. Next word is tripti. These are common words in Sanskrit which are in almost every Indian language. Tripti, if you translate it, it means fulfillment. I have a desire, I fulfill that desire, that fulfillment which comes, that satisfaction which comes, that is called tripti. So I'm hungry, I eat. Now the hunger has been satiated. That is tripti. I feel full and contented, fulfilled. And then santosha, that word he says, santuṣhṭas. Another Sanskrit word, very subtle differences of meaning. Santosha means satisfaction or contentment. Contentment. I have so much money, I have reached my target, being a millionaire or something like that. Contented. Not for long, but anyway. So, contentment. These three words he uses, and all of them he connects to the Atman. Rati, being engrossed or taking delight in or pleasure in. Then tripti, and then santosha. Tripti means fulfillment, and santosha means contentment. Samsara cannot give you rati, tripti, santosha. Samsara, the things of the world, because they continuously change. They are always changing. Even if you get pleasure out of it, even if you get some kind of fulfillment out of it, it's bound to go away after some time. The analysis is this. Samsara is continuously changing. Anityam, continuously changing. Samsara is jada, it's object to you. You are aware of it. Whatever you are aware of is samsara, the object there. And samsara is destructible, nashvara. It will be destroyed. People die, objects are exhausted, they are destroyed, things break. The Atman is just the opposite. Samsara, changing continuously. The Atman, the self, unchanging. Samsara, jada, object. The Atman, awareness. Just the opposite. Samsara, subject to death. The Atman is immortal. Now, between the changing and the unchanging, there can be no relationship. Interesting. Between the rapidly changing and the absolutely unchanging, there can be no relationship. There may seem to be a relationship, but there actually cannot be a relationship. Imagine, if something is moving and you are not moving, there can be no relationship between you and that thing. Either if you catch hold of it, you will be dragged along, or it will stop. But one thing is moving and you are not moving, you cannot hold on to that. Samsara, which is continuously moving and you, the unmoving witness, there's really no relationship between you and samsara. It's a devastating thing to say. It sounds philosophical when you say it. What you're saying is, between you, the pure subject, you have no relationship to what you consider to be even your property. What? Even your house, your car, no relationship. That your is an illusion. Husband, wife, children, yes. My children, illusion there. Not even that, not just that, body, my body. What is mine about this body? Do you have the papers for the body? If the cops pull you over, show me the papers. Not for the car, for the body. Did you make the body? No, nature made it. Do you sustain the body? Do you control the body? Does the body obey you? Not at all. And it would be absolutely disastrous if the body obeyed you. Because all the thousands of biochemical processes going on in the body all the time, and down to the minutest cellular level. If you are given charge, now you are in charge, drive it. Medical emergency, a 911 call. What did he? He tried to run his own body. Nature does it. Nature does everything. We have an illusion of control over the body. You don't own it. You didn't make it. Do you own the materials out of which it is made? The earth and the fire and the air and the water, all the biochemicals? No. You don't own the materials out of which it is made. It does not obey you, not even for one moment. Then how is it yours? I and this body, this relationship, is an illusory relationship. Between the changing and the unchanging, there can be no relationship. Even thoughts, perceptions and thoughts. How are the thoughts? Where are they coming from? I think my thoughts. Not really. Where are they bubbling up from? And they shine in your light for some time and then disappear again. You know that like a Brownian movement in a beam of light. In the morning you see a ray of sunlight entering your room and you see tiny motes of dust moving around there. Our thoughts are like that. Imagine yourself as consciousness, as awareness. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, they all dance around in your awareness for some time and disappear. From which darkness they have emerged and into which darkness they disappear, we have no idea. We do not have a relationship with our thoughts too. Even our thoughts, that's wrong. So, no relationship. Yet, how does this relationship come about? Why do I think that I will get joy from samsara? I will get delight, rati, tripti, santuṣhṭas from samsara. Why do I think that? The psychology of pleasure. The first thing which happens is, this Atman that we are talking about, this is hidden by a primal ignorance. This is Swami, theory, not theory. Right now, if I say, suppose Advaita is true, suppose, then you are Satchidananda, you are existence consciousness place. I am that existence consciousness place. Do I really honestly know it or feel it? If you say, no, I really don't. That I don't know it. I accept that it is true, and yet I don't know it. This is ignorance. You are actually admitting to that ignorance. So, after reading Advaita for a while, the question comes to us, oh, if I am Brahman, who has ignorance? The mind by itself cannot have ignorance. Brahman cannot have ignorance. Mind is an object. Whose ignorance? If the mind is not mine, then the ignorance of the mind is also of no concern to me. So how do I get ignorance? Are you following me? I'm enjoying myself. I don't know how many people.
Us too.
I'm off on a track. The opponents will ask this question. Where does this ignorance? Whose ignorance? Brahman, the ultimate reality, Brahman, Atman, pure being, what ignorance can there be? Nothing. It's like saying there's darkness in the sun. Impossible. No, ignorance is in the mind. But you said, I'm not the mind, I'm Atman, Brahman. So first of all, whether the mind by itself can have ignorance is doubtful. And even if it has, if it's not me or mine, what problem is it to me? So this question will come up, and it comes up. And Shankaracharya faces this question a few times in his commentaries. In the Gita commentary, in I think 13th chapter, somebody asked this question, that whose ignorance? Wait a minute, you've been talking about that you are Brahman and we don't know this, and when we realize it, overcome ignorance, you are enlightened. But whose ignorance? Brahman can't be ignorant. Shankara's answer is very interesting there. It seems that he's pulling the opponent's leg, but It's actually a deep answer. Whose ignorance? And Shankara says, why do you ask? And this person says, because I don't know. You admitted you don't know. It's your ignorance. As long as technically you're correct. Ignorance cannot be anybody's ignorance, ultimately. It is true that if you're Brahman, there can be no ignorance. But as long as you feel it, if you feel it and you feel the effects of ignorance, take it that ignorance is there and try to overcome it. In Hindi, they put it nicely in Uttarakhand. I'll translate for you. Agyan ko siddh mat kijiye, agyan ko kaatiye Mahatma ji. Do not try to prove the existence of ignorance. Try to overcome, cut down ignorance. Why did we go down this route? So, we're talking about the psychology of pleasure. Ignorance veils our real nature as the Atman. If I am the Atman, I don't know it. What I'm presented with is a body-mind. This body-mind, it has certain things which are pleasurable to it, certain things which are painful. And I the Atman, not knowing myself as the Atman, I the pure consciousness, not knowing myself as pure consciousness, I identify myself with an object presented to pure consciousness. What is the first object? Thoughts, mind. I am this mind. These are my thoughts. Desires. These are my desires. These are my desires means nobody thinks in that way. We think as I want. The wanting comes up from the mind, and I am this consciousness now. I want. Body. I am cold. I feel hot. I am ill. I am healthy. This body. Ill and healthy is more prana than body. I am hungry. I am thirsty. Prana. I am depressed. Mind. I am ignorant. Intellect. Not me, any of them, but I become identified with all of them. And a set of desires from past lives which bubble up, and I try to fulfill those desires. When I do succeed in fulfilling a desire temporarily, what happens is the desire subsides for a moment. I'm hungry, I eat something, the hunger subsides for a moment. I want entertainment, I watch a movie, the desire for entertainment subsides for a moment. When desire subsides, the Vedantic psychology is, the innate peace and joy and contentment of the self shine forth. Mind feels that touch of peace, of the spontaneous fulfillment, which is always our nature. But what happens is, because we do not know we are the Atman, that touch of joy and peace and contentment, we mistake it. I satisfied my desire, that's why I got pleasure. That's why I got happiness. That's why I got peace. I bought that object, so I felt happiness. That happiness is gone now very quickly. Now I must buy one more, then I will feel again happiness. I ate that cookie, that's why I felt pleasure. Now the pleasure has gone, now eat one more cookie, then I will feel that pleasure. Unfortunately, it does not work that way also. Law of diminishing marginal utility economics we learn, the more units of consumption, the less and less happiness, utility you get out of it. This is the psychology of pleasure. Erich Fromm, who was in this country a very perceptive psychoanalyst, he says we have counterfeit happiness. What is happiness in our modern time? Building up tension and releasing it. That's what we are doing in modern society. Building up tension, buy this, do this, go to this vacation, buy this product, and that desire builds up. And then you release that tension by doing that activity or buying that thing or enjoying that thing. And that we think is happiness. Building up tension and releasing it. That's what goes under the name of happiness today. Erich Fromm said, 1960s, I think. But the problem is, this kind of chasing happiness is chasing a mirage. Lack of fulfillment, unhappiness returns very quickly. Not only that, now we need more desires. First of all, fulfilling these desires can never lead to satisfaction. Why? You're trying to get satisfaction from samsara, which is changing, which is jara as an object, and which is subject to destruction. You're trying to get satisfaction from that. It will never be satisfying. And whatever little satisfaction we get, it will never last. It will go away. The unsatisfactory, temporary nature of worldly pleasures leads us to try to repeat them, increase the variety of objects that we want, and therefore sign up to a lifetime of sorrow. Imagine, in this changing samsara, where we try to arrange things to our benefit. Suppose our desires were fulfilled. Everything that I want, the house that I want to live in, I get that house. The car that I want to drive, I get that car. Not only that, the more subtle things, the behavior that I want from people around me, father, mother, brother, sister, colleagues, husband, wife, children, especially children. The way I want them to behave, they start behaving that way. Everything is perfect, suppose. Suppose it is possible. One day everything falls into place. How nice. I can see some people smiling. How nice it will be. But if samsara is changing, what will happen in the next moment? Change. A change from a perfect state with necessarily by definition will be an imperfect state. So the next state of samsara will be something that is unacceptable to me. By definition, there cannot be any stable, lasting happiness to be got from samsara. Relationships. Perfect strangers meet, they don't know each other, fall so much in love they decide to live together for the rest of their lives. After some time, they become so disgusted with each other that they decide never to see each other's face again. You see? Ashtavakra says, Mai ananta mahambodau Ashcharyam jiva vichaya udyanti gnanti khelanti pravishanti swabhavata. In me, the infinite ocean of awareness, how strange and wonderful are these jivas, sentient beings. They come up like waves in this ocean of awareness. Udyanti, they are born. Khelanti, play with each other. One Swami in Gangotri was Punjabi sadhu, he was saying, Khelanti, they play with each other. He says, I love you, I love you. Gnanti, fight with each other. Divorce, divorce. Pravishanti, they die, go back into that ocean of awareness. How strange is the play of jivas, of the individual sentient beings. Then tripti, this is rati, delight in sense organs. So how strange. Tripti, you eat something, hungry, eat something. Again in the evening, is it done, finished? No more eating the rest of the life? No, again evening. Uber Eats, evening. So again you have to repeat. And then contentment. I have certain targets. They always ask you, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So I have certain targets. My bank balance must be this much. My relationships must be in this place. My career must be there. I must get this promotion and that promotion next. A funny story I remember. Perceptive, really interesting story. It concerns Tata. Those who are Indians, you would have heard the name. He's one of the leading industrialists, Ratan Tata, in India, of the Tata family. In fact, I was impressed to see in the Harvard Business School, the first building that you see when you enter the campus on the side of the road, most impressive first building is the Tata building. So Ratan Tata donated money for that. Harvard Business School, the top business school in the world. I was just walking around and the lady there at the counter, she said, he has something to do with India, I think. I said, I also think so, something to do with India. Anyway, the story I want to share with you is this. I heard it from a brother monk who saw this. This was many, many years ago. Swami Bhuteshanandaji was the president of the order. He was the 12th president of the order in Ramakrishna Mission in our main monastery in Belur Mutt near Calcutta on the bank of the Ganga. Swami Atmasthanandaji was the general secretary of the order at that time. This was in the late 90s or early 90s. And Ratan Tata came on a visit to Belur Mutt. So what happened, the interaction that I heard from this monk, he said Ratan Tata asked the general secretary, so how do you train these young monks? What happens stage by stage? And it was explained to him that the young men, they come as novices, then they become what is called pre-probationers after certain years, And after certain years, they become probationers. They get the vows of brahmacharya. And then finally, after about 9 or 10 years, they get the vows of sannyasa. And their responsibilities and work also keep on increasing and things like that. Then he said, then it's not so different from the Tata Industries. He said, that's how we recruit young people. They come and then we induct them and we train up and give them higher and higher responsibilities over time as it proceeds. Swami Bhuteshanandaji was the president. He said, there's one big difference. What? When a young man enters your industry, the Tata company, this young person, man or woman, always thinks that one day I will be the manager and the general manager and the CEO and the president. This is my progress. And it's very natural for him to think that. That's the source of contentment, target, goal. None of these young people who come to this monastic order, they ever think that one day I'm going to be the head of this monastery, then I'm going to be the head of the whole order or something like that. Never. What do they think of? What is the goal then? They always think, how can I be a better sadhu? How can I become a sadhu? How can I become a good monk? How can I how can I become a good meditator? How can I cultivate devotion? How can I serve others? How can my life be blessed by doing these things? So this is the difference. Worldly person and a spiritual seeker. As far as desires are concerned, multiplication of desires and satisfaction of desires is the definition of happiness for a worldly person. Right or wrong? Just think about it. The whole advertising industry, Madison Avenue and everything, what is it? Multiplication of desires and satisfying those desires. And that is the definition of happiness. That's what happiness is and how it is to be attained. That's for the worldly person. The spiritual seeker, just the opposite. Transcending desires. Desirelessness is the criteria for happiness. We're going to minimize our desires, transcend our desires. That gives the spiritual person happiness. Not fulfilling desires, not having desires, dukkha for a worldly person, suffering. Having desires, unable to overcome desires, is dukkha for a spiritual person, suffering for a spiritual person. This is the difference. What is the solution? Suppose I cannot reach that state where I am contented with the Atman, where I take delight only in the Atman, where I am fulfilled by realizing that I am the Atman. Suppose I cannot reach that stage, he says, karma yoga. Transform our activities. Live a life. So transform our activities into spiritual activities. That's still a little vague. What do I actually do? And he says, fulfill your part in the cosmic cycle. What you are receiving, always give. Swami Vivekananda says, give, and do not look back. Whoever looks back, his ocean dwindles into a drop. If you look back, I have given so much. That's enough. Enough for my taxes for this year. The ocean dwindles into a drop then, spiritually speaking. It's good to give anyway. So one lives this moral, ethical, responsible way of living. This is not the goal, but this is the preparation. That prepares the mind for the higher spiritual life. This remaining stabilized in the self. And he says here, tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate. When one reaches that state, there are no more duties. Kāryaṁ literally means the duty, the thing to be done. There's nothing to be done for this person who has accomplished karma yoga, who has purified the mind. Nothing to be done means three meanings are there. Tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate. That person has no more work to be done, has to be understood in three ways at least. One way is, because there are no desires to fulfill. There's no more action to be undertaken for fulfilling desires. Most of our action is for fulfilling our own desires, for myself, for the self. We may think not. It's a very selfish way of thinking, Swami. No, actually that's the way we think. We are not recommending that you think that way, but that's the way we think. There's this story of an executive of a multinational corporation who said, I really, really love my job. I do it because I love the job. When the person was asked, so suppose we stop paying you, Will you still do the job because you love the job so much? He said, no. You have to pay me. So you're doing it for the money, not for the work itself. And you're given a choice, suppose you get the money and don't have to do the work. Or you do the work but you don't get the money. Which one will you choose? So I said, yeah, you're right, I'm doing it for the money. But is it for the money? Is it really for the money? Suppose you're told that you're given all the money, but you can't spend it. So no. I have to spend it. I have to buy things for my wife and children and parents and all of that. Then the person was told, all right, you can buy things for others. You can use the money that you're given, but they are no longer your wife, parent, children. They have no connection to you. You spend for others. So no, they have to be mine. So ultimately, all of that, whether it's the job or the money or the parents or wife, children, all leads back to self. That's where Vedanta attacks. The whole problem is if we consider the self to be this limited being, physical body and mind, then the whole of samsara comes in. What Vedanta does is, it shifts the reference of the word I. When I say I, what does it refer to? This. In that case, samsara. The witness consciousness, freedom from samsara. So that shifting is accomplished by Vedanta. So that is one meaning of the phrase, there is no more work to be done by such a person. The person who has realized the self does not need to do work to satisfy desires. Does not have these desires to be satisfied. So will not do any desire-prompted actions. There's no more work to be done. Second meaning is, in a deeper sense, in Vedanta considers all action that is going on in the universe, especially the work that we do, all of it is ultimately meant for enlightenment. Aurobindo, beautiful statement, Rishi Aurobindo, he said, life itself is yoga. If you do it consciously, you say, I am a yogi. But if you do it unconsciously, you say that I'm just living life. You do it unconsciously, you're living life, but that's an unconscious process, takes time and much more suffering. Consciously, if you're spiritual, a yogi, so life itself is yoga. All action is finally meant to take you to enlightenment. Whatever we have done in life, we may be the rankest atheist, no belief in God, religion, spirituality, nothing at all. I am here to earn money. Fine, that action is also taking you to Godward. Very indirectly, roundabout way, lifetimes of effort, but it is taking you there. We are trying to find lasting peace and satisfaction, and that is found nowhere else except in our real nature, in the self, in the real nature. So all actions are meant for that. Now suppose this person has already realized that and is centered in the Atman, then no more action is necessary. If all action is meant to take us to enlightenment and you have achieved that or you have made that breakthrough and you're centered in that, you're not shaken away easily from that, then action is not necessary for you. Third meaning of this, tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate. Third meaning is this. There is actually action after enlightenment. You just have to look at the lives of enlightened people. Vivekananda, tremendous action. Even Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, all of them, till their very last day, they were fully engaged in action. But action, work, now becomes an expression of their enlightenment. And it's always for the welfare of others rather than this one limited individual being. So, tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate, that person has no more duty to be accomplished. It does not mean that after enlightenment there is no action. The third meaning is there is action which is an expression of that enlightenment. Do enlightened beings act? Do they do anything? Technically, from an Advaitic perspective, no. If you ask that enlightened being, are you doing lots of things? No. I'm Brahman. Brahman does nothing. But practically from the outside, if you look at that person, take a third person view, often they are much more active, much more helpful to society than the rest of us. Their lives are a blessing to the rest of us. So these are the three meanings of tasya kāryaṁ na vidyate. Let's do one more verse and we'll stop. Naiva tasya kritena artho na kriteneha kaścana Na chasya sarva bhuteshu, na chasya sarva bhuteshu, kaschid artha vyapashraya, kaschid artha vyapashraya. This person, the enlightened person, has nothing to gain from doing something, nothing to lose also by not doing something. By doing something, he does not gain anything. By not doing something, he does not lose anything here. Because the person has realized the self, which is the all in all. Not only that, na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid artha vyapashraya. This person is truly internally independent, does not depend on anybody or anything for anything at all. It does not depend on anybody. On any being, there is no dependence. Because this person is centered in the self, in the Atman. So there are two problems. One is activity, and the other one is inactivity. The problem of activity we know very well. Manhattan, busiest city. I saw this slogan in an airport, I think JFK or LaGuardia. It says, the city that never sleeps but dreams. The city that never sleeps but dreams. It's true. It's one of the busiest cities in the world. Here, if you sleep, it's counted as wasted, time wasted if you're sleeping. So, as much time as you can spend in action. What is the term? Workaholic. Workaholic. Yes, the people addicted to action. I heard, I don't know how far it's true, that in Japan, corporate workers have to be forced to take their vacations. They have to be forced to take vacations. And they don't want to stop working. Even among monks, I've seen. There was this Swami, very interesting, funny Swami. He's passed away, so I can tell the story now. He was one of the hardest workers I've seen. Very dynamic, very hardworking. He would tell the head Swami, the head of the ashram where we were novices at that time, brahmacharis. So this novice who was senior to me, he would tell the head Swami, Swami, I am available at your disposal from 4 a.m. in the morning till 11 in the night. Anything, anytime you want. And really amazing things he could do. So any kind of work that you give. And he said that, and he would look after 2 or 3 departments in the ashram altogether. He said, I am like those donkeys, unless you put a big load on them, they don't start moving. So you give a lot of work to it, then I start working. But I noticed something interesting about this monk. When there was no work, when he sat down, he immediately fell asleep. Now that is not a good thing. You should be calm and serene, engaged in action when you're called upon to act, and yet when you're left alone, your mind should be alert and alive and directed inwards in spiritual life. Swami Vivekananda said, in the midst of intense action, eternal calmness. And in the midst of the calmness of the mountain caves, he says, in the mountain caves, there, absolute calmness outside. Internally, the mind should be able to work like a blast furnace, he says. You're intensely thinking something. Many of these philosophical books we are reading, they were written by monks living in caves. I grew up in a place, just outskirts of which, there were these places, Dhavalgiri and others near Bhuvaneshwar. Buddhist monks, more than 1500 years ago, they used to live in those caves. And many of them produced philosophical works which we are studying in Harvard now, in 21st century. But see, sitting in a cave, they are not connected to internet and with Starbucks coffee and laptop and writing papers. No. Once a day, they go out to nearby village to beg for their food, and the whole day is spent in meditation and thinking, and lifetime they will write one book, which 2000 years later we are still reading. So, intense action, mentally, externally calm. Intense action outward, internally calm. That is the ideal of karma yoga, Swami Vivekananda says. So addiction to action is not good. The opposite is also not good. Laziness. So that is tamasic. Addiction to action is rajasic, and addiction to laziness is tamasic. Laziness is also connected to dependence. Won't do anything for oneself. I have seen among all the great swamis, one interesting characteristic was and independence. Not depending. Sarvam paravasham dukkham. Whatever depends on others, if your happiness, your peace of mind depends on others, suffering is guaranteed. No matter what others do, I am happy. No matter what others say, I am happy. No matter what others think, I am happy. No matter what others think, I am happy. I remember in the Himalayas, there was this monk, a very daredevil kind of monk. Monks also gossip. So, a group of monks, this happened. A group of monks came to this monk and they were saying, that, Mahatmaji, what they are saying about you in that ashram. Rumors. What they are saying about you in the ashram. And this monk said, it's all true. In Hindi, he said, Sab sach hai. Even without asking what they are saying. It's all true. What do you mean? You just wanted to know whether the rumors are true. I don't know what the rumors are, but just take it to be true. That will make you happy, right? You get a little bit very good gossip. Then you're getting angry. No, I'm not angry. Just don't care. You may think something about me. Fine, it's all true. He just said in Hindi, Sab sach hai. So my happiness does not depend on it. It's easier for a monk, you might think. It's easier for a monk. But that's not really true. It's a personality type. And it's also an internal training. Even in the midst of society, in a corporate environment, in a family environment, one can still do that. These things are connected. If my attitude is, I am here to give. I am here to look after, to take care of others. Then I really don't bother about what others think about me. So you get that great peace and inner strength. Independence. Old Swamis, I still remember, yes, I'll come to you. I was waiting for a question. So I'll come to you. I remember this old Swami, he was in his 80s in our monk's quarter in Belur Math. Hardly able to walk. He said proudly, the general secretary was visiting the monk's quarters, general secretary of the order, and this old Swami was sitting there. The old Swami very proudly said, I water the flower pots. So he has to walk with a walker, he has to walk with that. He takes this can of water and he waters the flower pots in the morning. I water the flower pots. And the general secretary said, yes, don't sit and eat. In Bengali he said, boshe boshe kheo na. Never said. So always, wherever you are, you give something as much as possible to others. Yes. I was also told, we often, as novices, we had to take care of the senior elderly Swamis. And I was told by a Swami that when you're looking after there was a very senior Swami in that ashram in nearly 90 years old. Always let him do what he can do. Don't try to do things for him out of your eagerness. I think that's the care of the elderly. That's one thing you are taught. That the independence is very important. We have a question. We'll end with a question.
It occurred to me, where does a great scientist or a great artist or a musician or anything of that type fit into this picture that you are giving here? I mean, the work of a great scientist has many repercussions in the world and to people, and if he does not take pride in that, is he? But he's not a monk. He's doing this work. Say, take Einstein, like that.
Yes.
Or for the artist, say someone like Van Gogh or Picasso, or I mean, they are adding to the general life of people.
Yes.
And where do they
Yes.
fit into this picture?
If you narrow down the question to how is this related to spirituality? That is the spirituality we're talking about. How is this related? Is it spiritual or not to be one of the great scientists and artists, writers, the creative people in our society? The answer is yes and no. Yes, it could be spiritual, and no, it need not be spiritual necessarily. I was just thinking, I lived in 3 interesting places in the last 3 years. One is Hollywood. One is Manhattan. The third one is Harvard. One is glamour and fame and the movie industry. One is money here. I'm generalizing, one is money. And the other one where I am right now there, that's learning, science and art and research and all. And the vibrations of the places are different. You can feel it. And these are the peaks of human achievement in our world today. These are some of the greatest places in the world today to live in. Although I must say, I was in Silicon Valley just a couple of months ago. I had gone to San Jose. When I told them I've lived in 3, this line I spewed that I lived in LA and in Hollywood and Manhattan and Harvard and learning and money and glamour. They said, oh, all that is overrated. The best place is Silicon Valley. We have the smartest people, we have the most intelligent people, we have the richest people, everything is here. Those places are overrated. Anyway, my feeling is this, the sense I got, is what Sri Ramakrishna said, the 1 and the 0. If you put a lot of zeros together, it's still 0. But if you have a 1 and you keep adding zeros to it, then the value increases. The 1 by itself is still valuable, and you add 1 0, it becomes 10. Add 1 more, it becomes 100. Add 1 more, it becomes 1,000. But you keep just the zeros, nothing. What do I mean by that? One could be a brilliant writer or a scientist whose work actually has tremendous effect for a shorter or longer period on society. All that is true. But I'm asking, what about the person himself or herself? One could still be miserable internally. One could, unfortunately, still be a miserable human being also. One could be a great artist and an extremely nasty human being. One could be a great writer and somebody you would not want to meet socially. Could be. But the other way is also true. There are examples among scientists, writers, artists who are, along with their talents, along with their achievements, they're also deeply spiritual. He mentioned Einstein. Einstein was deeply spiritual. Swami Vivekananda said, one can attain that spiritual realization, one can do it by religion, by science, and by art. But one needs Advaita to understand this. This is what he said. Sister Nivedita quotes him. Sister Nivedita, in the introduction to the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, he said that our master told us you can actually become spiritual through art. You can become spiritual through science also, he says, as well as religion. But that quest must be there. So that search for that one must be there. Just because, see, after all, to a great extent, a great scientist or a writer or an artist, most of these are talents with which you come. And a lucky break in life. So there's a driving passion from within. You have the capacities, the intellectual capacity or the artistic capacity, the creativity for some period in your life, and you achieve a lot. But that may not have much relation to spiritual life. May not. But could have. And if it has, then it's all the better. Spiritual plus a great thinker. Wonderful. That's 1 plus 1 more 0, 1 more 0, and the value keeps on increasing. If a spiritual seeker is also a writer, a musician, an artist, or a scientist, wonderful. Nothing like that. That's what I think. All right, on that very nice question. You had a question? Okay, the last question there. Just wait for the microphone.
Thank you. I'm afraid this is not really relevant to the topics that we discussed through Bhagavad Gita today. But personally, my problem is I'm like Buddhist yesterday, Shaivite in the morning, Vishnu Bhakta in evening, and Christian in the night before I sleep. So and it's personally very hard to find what path is mine or what's the God's name I have to recite. So do you have any advice?
You have come to the right place. Have you read a book called The Perennial Philosophy?
Yes, I have.
Yes. Aldous Huxley, there at the very beginning, he says, underlying all the great spiritual traditions of the world, there is what we might call a perennial philosophy. That there is an ultimate reality to be attained, there is a method to attain it, and that is the goal of life. This is common to all the paths. And all the paths have deep truths in them. There is an idea called the Ishta. Ishta means your chosen ideal.
To choose.
Yes.
It's hard to choose because sometimes this deity appeals, sometimes this deity appeals.
Right. So you take initiation under a guru in a particular tradition. It could be in our own tradition also. But you take initiation under a guru, and the advantage of having a liberal and open tradition like this is all the insights that you get from mystic Christianity, from Sufism, from Buddhism, for all those things, from Shaivism, all those things go to enhance and make your spiritual life richer and stronger. And yet, you are digging a well in this one place. If one digs a well, now a little bit here, another bit there, and then the next day another place, you will never get water from there. Whereas if you had kept on digging at the same place, you would have gotten water. What you want is that you want to settle down in one path and search deeply there, and yet at the same time you don't want to let go of the advantages of all the other paths. That's what you want. If you were fanatical and narrow, this question wouldn't have come. You would have found one and that's it, everything else is wrong. But you notice that there is something very good in each of those paths and something attractive in each of those paths. How to get the benefit of all those paths and yet be a sincere and deep practitioner of one path? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the path itself is not important, but one must sincerely follow one. In Bengali he said, "Mot kichu noy, tobe ektake dhore thakte hoy." Look at the beautiful combination. He's not particularly fanatical about this path or that path. And yet, he says, don't do what you're doing. Hold on to one and follow one, and you can use the insights of all the others to enrich in your path, to make your path rich. Swami Vivekananda said that by meditation, by service, by devotion, and by knowledge, by Vedantic knowledge, that means philosophical knowledge, by one or more or all of these, be free, and that is the whole of spirituality, of religion. So all the paths will be useful. And as you start practicing in one path, suppose you take initiation from a guru and start practicing in that way, very soon you will see your own tendency will come out. That are you basically a philosopher? Are you basically a meditator? Are you basically a man of action who wants to do good to the world? Are you basically loving and devotional? Or some mixture of one or two or three of these? It will come up. For every practitioner, within a few months, few years, a certain mix comes to the top. So my advice would be, see what pulls you. Of all the things which pull you, what do you feel to be the one which pulls you a lot and you consider it to be high? It should be liberal, open. It should not be a path which tells you, now you come to this path, that's it. You have to shut the door to everything else. You have to consider everything else is false. Only this is correct, and you have to follow this only. That will not work for you. And that's not a good way to go. So you should go down a path which is open and liberal and yet deep. So you have explored enough. Take up something and start practicing. Commit. Thank you very much. We'll discuss it later. He's very insistent. All right, question. You've really run out of time.
Sorry to hold you. So I just have one question. You keep mentioning about it's an ignorance that the individual being we talk about, we are Atman. And Swamiji, I have a question. Like you keep talking about this is ignorance, this is ignorance. So if Atman is the reality, I mean, if Atman is Brahman, so why Atman is in ignorance?
So that, I think we have talked about it more than once in these sessions. Yes, if you think deeply about Advaita, you will come to this question. You'll come to this question. And Swami Vivekananda's answer to this was, there is no answer to this. Why not? Notice one, I'll just give you the answer in brief and then we'll stop. Notice the language of your question. Why is the Atman in ignorance? You're asking this question? Why is the Atman in ignorance? But even the question why is part of what we consider Maya, ignorance. After all, what is this ignorance? Ignorance is an English word. The Sanskrit word is avidya or Maya. And there's a definition, there's a specific definition of that Maya. Space, time and causation. Desha, kala, nimitta. Causation. Causation is cause and effect. Why? Whatever you can ask why about is already you have accepted causation. See, if you say, what is outside space? If you ask what is outside space, do you see the question is wrong because you've already accepted space. When there is inside, outside, the space is already there. If you ask what is before time, you have already accepted time. Because before and after is a time word. Similarly, if you ask why ignorance, then you already accepted ignorance, because why, causation is a part of ignorance. Yeah. That is the answer that Sadhu, I quoted in Hindi, the Uttarakhand Sadhu, he said, don't try to prove or establish ignorance. Try to cut down ignorance. He said in Hindi, Mahatma ji, agyan ko siddh mat kijiye, agyan ko kaatiye. When we go to, or the best answer I found was, the enlightened people, those who are enlightened, those who have got Brahma Jnana, they don't seem to be bothered by this question. So somebody said, on our side there is the question, there is no answer. On their side they have the answer but no question. Good place to end. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.